burnout. It is a word that echoes through workplaces, whispered in break rooms and spoken aloud in urgent conversations between colleagues and friends who find themselves running on empty. But what exactly is burnout, and why has it become such a pressing concern in modern life? To answer these questions, we need to trace the origins of the term, explore what it truly means, examine its causes, and learn to recognize its many forms. The story of burnout as a psychological phenomenon begins not so long ago. In the early 1970s, an American psychologist named Herbert Freudenberger noticed something happening among those he worked with, especially in professions that demanded deep reserves of compassion and energy, like healthcare and social work. He observed that many of his colleagues, himself included, were becoming depleted, demoralized, and unable to maintain their high ideals. Freudenberger coined the term burnout to describe this state, marking the start of a conversation that would only grow in importance over the decades. Although Freudenberger's early research focused on caregiving professions, it soon became clear that burnout could affect anyone exposed to unrelenting stress, regardless of their job. Since its first clinical description in 1974, burnout has attracted much attention and debate. Scholars have proposed more than 140 definitions, each attempting to capture its elusive essence. Despite this, there is still no single universally accepted definition of burnout, and experts have not reached consensus on whether it should be classified as an independent disorder. The medical community does agree on one point. Burnout is not considered a disease in itself, and its symptoms can overlap with other mental health conditions, such as depression or anxiety. Nevertheless, the World Health Organization has taken an important step in acknowledging the significance of burnout. Since 2019, in the International Classification of Diseases (ICD-11), burnout is listed as an occupational phenomenon, not a medical condition, but a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. At its core, burnout is characterized by three main dimensions, as identified by Christina Maslach and reflected in the Maslach Burnout Inventory, the most widely used tool for studying burnout. These dimensions are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, sometimes described as cynicism or mental distance from one's work, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment or professional efficacy. Simply put, those experiencing burnout feel drained of energy, become increasingly negative or detached from their job, and begin to doubt their competence and effectiveness. But what causes burnout to take hold? Research points squarely to chronic, unmanageable stress, particularly in the workplace. When demands are high, time is scarce, and the boundaries between work and personal life become blurred, the risk of burnout rises. High workloads, conflicting expectations, and insufficient opportunities for recovery all contribute to relentless pressure that can break even the most resilient individuals. It is not just the amount of work that matters. How we experience that work, whether we feel supported, have a sense of control, and can recover from stress plays a crucial role. Both systemic factors such as organizational culture and working conditions, and individual vulnerabilities such as perfectionism or difficulty setting boundaries can influence who develops burnout and how severe it becomes. Personal pressures outside the workplace can also add fuel to the fire. Work-family conflict is a notable example, where the strain of balancing professional responsibilities with home life leads to emotional exhaustion, a key component of burnout. Societal developments and broader living conditions can compound these pressures, creating a complex web of factors that make burnout a deeply layered experience. The interplay between personal and work-related factors means that no two cases of burnout are exactly alike, yet common threads run through the stories of those who endure it. So, what are the signs that someone is burning out? The symptoms of burnout are wide-ranging and can be both subtle and severe. Early indicators often appear as persistent fatigue that no amount of sleep seems to cure, difficulty concentrating, and impaired memory. People may notice that their sleep quality has declined, waking up unrefreshed or struggling with insomnia. Physically, burnout can manifest as headaches, muscle pain, and even gastrointestinal issues. Those with burnout are at a significantly higher risk for such complaints compared to those without it. As burnout progresses, emotional symptoms become more pronounced. A sense of being emotionally drained or unable to cope with daily demands is common. Irritability, anxiety, and even anger may flare, sometimes directed at colleagues, clients, or family members. Some people experience a growing sense of cynicism or detachment from their work, finding it hard to care about tasks or the people they serve. This is the depersonalization dimension, when the emotional connection to work fades, replaced by a mechanical or even resentful approach. Behavioral changes are often the next clue. Burnout can lead to absenteeism as individuals find it increasingly difficult to face the workplace. Job performance suffers, and once enthusiastic employees may begin to withdraw socially, avoiding colleagues and group activities. There may be a noticeable drop in morale, with individuals expressing hopelessness or futility about their work. In some cases, this can even spill over into personal relationships, straining connections with friends and family. The sense of personal accomplishment, an essential buffer against stress, begins to erode. People experiencing burnout may doubt their abilities and lose confidence in their professional competence. Tasks that once felt manageable now seem insurmountable, and the satisfaction that came from a job well done is replaced by a persistent sense of ineffectiveness. Over time, this can become a self-fulfilling cycle where declining performance fuels further self-doubt, deepening the burnout experience. It is important to note that while burnout shares features with other mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety, it is considered a distinct occupational phenomenon. According to the International Classification of Diseases, 11th revision, burnout specifically refers to experiences arising from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. This means that while personal life stressors can contribute to or exacerbate burnout, the syndrome is fundamentally tied to the occupational context. The way burnout unfolds is rarely sudden. Instead, it creeps in gradually, often going unnoticed until the symptoms become impossible to ignore. Early warning signs may be brushed aside as just a bad week or the result of temporary overload. However, without intervention or a change in circumstances, the toll on both mind and body can become profound. Burnout can impair not only psychological health, leading to fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and personality changes, but also physical health, increasing the risk of headaches, cardiovascular problems, and even chronic pain. Certain professions appear to be at greater risk. High-demand careers such as healthcare, education, and service industries have been closely linked to burnout, particularly when the emotional demands of the job are high and resources are limited. However, burnout is not confined to any single field. Anyone exposed to chronic, unmanageable stress at work may find themselves vulnerable to its effects. Recognizing the warning signs of burnout is a crucial step toward addressing it. Persistent exhaustion that does not improve with rest, increasing cynicism or negativity about work, and a sense of declining effectiveness should not be dismissed as inevitable side effects of a busy life. These are red flags, signaling that something deeper is at play. Other indicators can include social withdrawal, a loss of motivation, and a general decline in productivity and job satisfaction. Interpersonal relationships may also suffer. Burnout can make it difficult to connect with others, increasing irritability and reducing empathy. In some cases, this detachment can be particularly damaging in professions where relationships are central to the work, such as teaching or caregiving. The resulting sense of isolation can further compound the emotional burden of burnout. Physical symptoms are a key part of the picture. Research indicates that those experiencing burnout are more likely to report muscle pain, headaches, and gastrointestinal symptoms. Fatigue is particularly common, often described as a profound, chronic exhaustion that affects not just the body, but the mind and spirit as well. Over time, these physical complaints can become chronic, adding another layer of distress for those affected. The boundaries between work and personal life play a pivotal role in the development of burnout. When these lines become blurred, when work invades evenings, weekends, or even vacations, the risk of burnout rises. Setting boundaries is recognized as an essential strategy for prevention, yet in many modern workplaces it can be difficult to say no or to carve out time for recovery. The absence of clear limits, combined with overwhelming demands and conflicting expectations, can create a perfect storm for burnout to take hold. Not everyone exposed to stress at work will develop burnout. Individual factors such as coping style, resilience, and the availability of social support can influence vulnerability. Some people have a higher tolerance for stress or are better able to recover from setbacks. Others may be more susceptible, especially if they struggle to set boundaries or have perfectionistic tendencies. The interplay between personal and organizational factors means that burnout is shaped by both the environment and the individual's response to it. Despite decades of research and increasing awareness, burnout remains a challenging phenomenon to define and measure. The Maslach Burnout Inventory has become the most widely used tool, but foundational questions remain about how best to capture the experience and distinguish it from related conditions. What is clear, however, is that burnout represents more than just fatigue or frustration. It is a profound state of exhaustion, cynicism, and diminished efficacy that can have serious consequences for individuals, organizations, and society as a whole. In summary, burnout is a psychological syndrome rooted in chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Its hallmarks are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization or cynicism, and a reduced sense of professional accomplishment. The causes are complex, involving high workloads, blurred boundaries, conflicting expectations, and insufficient opportunities for recovery. Both physical and psychological symptoms are common, and the impact can extend beyond the workplace into every aspect of life. Recognizing the signs and understanding the underlying causes is the first step toward addressing this pervasive challenge, one that continues to shape the modern world of work. Burnout extends far beyond an individual's internal experience. Its effects ripple outward, impacting not only those struggling with exhaustion and cynicism, but also entire organizations, the quality of services provided, and the fabric of relationships at home and in the workplace. To understand why burnout requires urgent attention, we must explore its many-layered impact on bodies and minds, on productivity and innovation, on teams and workplace culture, and on the bonds that connect us to others. At its core, burnout is a state of exhaustion marked by cynicism about one's occupation and doubt in one's ability to perform. For individuals, the toll is multifaceted: physical, psychological, and social. A growing body of evidence links burnout to a range of negative health outcomes. Staff experiencing burnout face increased risks of cardiovascular disease, depression, and absenteeism. The effects go beyond psychological distress, manifesting in physical symptoms such as muscle pain and weakened immune systems. In healthcare, for example, muscle pain and emotional exhaustion are particularly common, especially among young nurses working in hospitals and emergency departments. The psychological burden of burnout is just as concerning. Chronic workplace stress, the environment in which burnout thrives, has been linked to heightened anxiety, depression, and poorer overall well-being. Research shows that burnout leads to increases in negative mental health outcomes and decreases in positive ones. This pattern is not limited to traditional workplaces. Even athletes who experience burnout report similar declines in mental health as exhaustion and cynicism take hold. Burnout does not exist in isolation. Its effects seep into the most personal aspects of life. Relationships with partners, family, and friends often become collateral damage. Chronic work stress and burnout can disrupt relationships through a phenomenon known as mood contagion. When one partner is emotionally depleted or distracted by work-related pressures, the imbalance can erode relationship quality. Those experiencing burnout may become more irritable, less emotionally available, and prone to social withdrawal. These changes can create a feedback loop, where strained relationships further hinder recovery from burnout. The data are striking. According to a 2018 survey by Deloitte, 83% of American professionals reported that burnout negatively affected their personal relationships. The consequences go beyond emotional strain. Burnout can trigger behavioral changes, lead to social isolation, and even impair physical health, leaving individuals more susceptible to illness and ongoing loneliness. The reduction in quality time and emotional presence with family members is especially damaging, often leading to disconnection and a cycle of irritability that further undermines relationships at home. Burnout's impact also reaches the organizational level, where costs are measured not only in lost productivity, but also in diminished morale, innovation, and the ability to retain talent. Burnout is deeply connected to organizational culture and leadership styles. It is not simply the result of an individual's inability to cope, but often arises from mismatches between organizational demands and what workers need to thrive. When employees lack control, receive insufficient rewards, or work in environments where community is broken down, or values are in conflict, the risk of burnout rises sharply. Alarmingly, burnout is widespread. More than half of the United States workforce, about 55%, report experiencing some form of burnout. The consequences for organizations are stark. Burnout reduces efficiency, with 72% of affected employees acknowledging a decline in their ability to perform effectively. Job performance suffers for 71%, while 65% report negative effects on customer service. Innovation, the lifeblood of any dynamic organization, drops among 64% of burned-out workers. Attendance falters, with more than half noting increased absenteeism. Perhaps most tellingly, employees suffering from burnout are nearly 3 times more likely to plan to leave their employer than those who are not burned out. These effects are especially pronounced among younger workers, with burnout rates highest among Generation Z, 66%, and Millennials, 58%, and elevated in remote and hybrid work environments. These statistics paint a picture of widespread malaise, and it is growing. A study from 2025 finds job burnout at an all-time high of 66%, with return-to-office mandates potentially worsening existing stressors. The consequences of burnout for organizations extend beyond their employees to the consumers and clients who rely on their services. In healthcare, for instance, burnout among workers is linked to lost clinical hours and high turnover, contributing to an estimated $4.6 billion in annual losses in the United States alone. Quality of care and patient safety are compromised when those delivering services are depleted and disengaged. Organizations that fail to address burnout face substantial costs, financial, reputational, and human. Excessive workplace stress is estimated to result in up to $190 billion in healthcare costs each year. High rates of absenteeism and job dissatisfaction often follow. Employers who prioritize employee health and safety tend to outperform their peers, suggesting that attention to well-being is not just an ethical imperative, but a strategic one. Yet, many approaches to burnout fall short because they focus on quick fixes or individual resilience without addressing the deeper roots embedded in workplace culture. Efforts to reduce burnout that ignore toxic behaviors and systemic problems are likely to fail. Shifting organizational culture is essential for meaningful change. Burnout cannot be solved solely at the individual level. It is a complex organizational phenomenon that diminishes well-being and productivity, increases turnover, and is closely linked to leadership style and organizational climate. When leaders fail to foster an environment of support, recognition, and shared values, burnout can take root and spread. The consequences are seen in eroded service quality, declining organizational performance, and a workforce that is physically and emotionally drained. Among those experiencing burnout, over 61% report feeling both physically and emotionally depleted, while 44% cite unreasonably high workloads as a driving factor. The connection between work and home becomes especially strained in the presence of burnout. Work-family conflict and emotional exhaustion are deeply interrelated, with negative consequences for both individuals and organizations. When work demands consistently overshadow the needs of family and personal life, emotional exhaustion builds, leading to further strain in both areas. The cycle of overwork and insufficient recovery time is particularly damaging. Without adequate time to recharge, productivity drops, errors increase, and the risk of illness and turnover rises. Recovery is not a luxury but a necessity for sustained performance. Mindfulness and supportive strategies can help improve mental health and performance, but their effectiveness is often limited if underlying workplace stressors remain unaddressed. The responsibility for managing burnout is increasingly recognized as belonging not just to individuals, but to organizations as well. This shift in perspective reflects a growing understanding that burnout is fundamentally a workplace phenomenon rooted in systemic issues rather than personal shortcomings. In some sectors, the stakes are especially high. Mental health services, for example, have long struggled with staff burnout. The negative outcomes are felt not only by the staff who may experience emotional exhaustion, reduced motivation, and poorer health, but also by organizations which face disrupted operations and increased turnover, and by consumers who may receive lower quality care. Burnout among healthcare workers is a particularly urgent concern. Prevalence is high, and the consequences ripple outward, affecting not only the well-being of professionals, but also the safety and experience of patients. Interventions to improve well-being and reduce burnout in healthcare are not just beneficial, they are necessary to maintain the integrity of the entire system. The economic and social costs of burnout are significant. Reduced worker well-being leads to long-term absenteeism and high costs for employers and society at large. Key contributors include high workloads, poor work-life balance, and insufficient opportunities for recovery. When these factors are left unaddressed, burnout becomes entrenched and its effects multiply. The urgency of the problem is reflected in the lived experience of those affected. Burned-out employees are 3 times more likely to leave their jobs, setting off a cascade of costs for recruitment, training, and lost institutional knowledge. For individuals, the journey through burnout can be isolating and dispiriting, marked by a sense of powerlessness and disconnection. For organizations, the price is paid in diminished morale, eroded trust, and the gradual loss of what makes a workplace vibrant and effective. In summary, burnout is not merely a personal ordeal, but a phenomenon with far-reaching consequences. It undermines physical and mental health, disrupts relationships, saps productivity, and erodes the foundations of organizational success. Its prevalence is rising, and its effects are felt across industries, generations, and modes of work. Addressing burnout is not simply a matter of individual resilience or personal adjustment. It requires a fundamental reassessment of how work is structured, how organizations support their people, and how we collectively prioritize well-being. The stakes could hardly be higher for individuals, for organizations, and for the society that depends on both. Burnout, once it takes hold, can feel like an inescapable fog draining energy, clouding optimism and sapping hope. Yet, the story does not have to end there. Recovery is possible, and even more importantly, there are proven ways to reduce the risk of burnout before it begins. For both individuals and organizations, the path forward lies not in quick fixes, but in a steady, multi-dimensional approach grounded in the best evidence from research and real-world experience. One of the most powerful insights from recent studies is that preventing burnout is not solely the responsibility of the individual. While personal strategies are important, the most effective interventions occur when individuals, teams, leaders, and entire organizations work together to change the conditions that give rise to burnout. This systems perspective is reflected in frameworks like IGLOO, which stands for individual, group, leader, organization, and overarching context. Each layer plays a role, and meaningful change often requires action at several levels simultaneously. At the organizational level, prevention begins with a willingness to examine and, if needed, redesign the very structure of work. Modifying job tasks, rethinking schedules, and updating policies are not just administrative changes, they are acts of care that recognize human limits. When organizations adjust workloads, create opportunities for genuine rest, and foster open communication, they protect their employees' well-being and secure the long-term health of the organization itself. Evidence shows that such systemic interventions can effectively reduce exhaustion, which is at the heart of occupational burnout. In healthcare, for example, organizations that invest in both individual and collective strategies to improve well-being see measurable benefits for staff and patients alike. Leadership style is another crucial part of the solution. Supportive, transformational leaders, those who inspire, empower, and involve employees in decision-making, can buffer against burnout and promote recovery. These leaders do more than manage tasks. They model healthy boundaries, provide practical support, and create an environment where seeking help is a normal part of working life. The effects ripple outward. When supervisors are attuned to their team's needs and respond with flexibility and understanding, employees are better able to recover from stress and maintain their sense of agency. Research highlights the effectiveness of leadership training and employee participation in shaping recovery experiences. When people feel seen, heard, and valued, hope and motivation are easier to sustain. Still, organizations cannot carry the entire burden. Individual strategies remain essential, especially for those already experiencing symptoms of burnout. The first step is often recognition, becoming aware of early warning signs, whether it is a persistent sense of depletion, a loss of interest, or growing irritability. Early intervention, before exhaustion becomes overwhelming, is key to prevention and recovery. Using validated assessment tools or regular check-ins can help individuals and teams monitor their well-being and catch problems before they escalate. For individuals, self-care is more than a buzzword. It is a set of intentional actions that protect physical and mental reserves. Prioritizing sleep, nutrition, and movement supports the body's natural resilience. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, which focuses attention on the present moment, has been shown to lower stress and enhance recovery. Cognitive behavioral therapy offers another evidence-based approach, helping people reframe unhelpful thoughts and build coping skills. Resilience training also equips individuals with strategies to bounce back from setbacks and maintain optimism in the face of chronic stress. Establishing boundaries is one of the most effective forms of self-care. Without clear limits, work can seep into every part of life, making true rest impossible. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is an act of self-preservation that restores balance and protects mental well-being. Faculty members, for example, benefit from setting limits on student demands, while employees in all sectors find that separating work and personal time reduces stress, increases productivity, and improves job satisfaction. Boundaries are dynamic, not fixed. They may need to be adjusted as workloads shift or life circumstances change. Seeking support is equally important. Burnout thrives in isolation, but loses its grip when people reach out to colleagues, friends, or professionals for help. Support from supervisors, peer networks, or employee assistance programs can make a significant difference. Some organizations are now prioritizing cultures of support where asking for help is normalized and resources for stress management are readily available. Access to tools and resources designed to manage stress and maintain inspiration can help individuals not only avoid burnout, but also rediscover energy and hope when it fades. Rest and recovery are not luxuries, they are necessities. Taking time off, even for short breaks, interrupts the cycle of overwork and helps replenish depleted reserves. Evidence suggests that regular recovery practices, whether it is a real lunch break, a walk outside, or a longer period away from work, are essential for sustaining resilience and productivity over the long term. Neglecting these opportunities can set the stage for chronic exhaustion. For those in frontline or high-stress roles, special attention to resilience building and engagement is crucial. In healthcare, interventions that combine individual skill building with organizational changes, such as improved staffing models, flexible scheduling, and supportive supervision, have been shown to reduce burnout and improve well-being. Mindfulness, cognitive behavioral strategies, and resilience training are all valuable tools, but they are most effective when backed by systemic changes that address root causes, such as excessive workload and lack of autonomy. A systems perspective, one that looks beyond symptoms to the structures and cultures that sustain them, is vital. Burnout is rarely the result of personal weakness or individual failure. It is more often a sign that systems are out of balance. Organizations can use this understanding to identify leverage points for change, such as increasing employee participation in decision-making, redesigning jobs for greater meaning and variety, or implementing evidence-based workplace policies that prioritize well-being. Culture change may be slow, but it is possible, and small, consistent steps can add up to profound transformation over time. Psychological factors like optimism, humor, and resilience serve as protective buffers. Cultivating these qualities, both individually and collectively, can help reduce the risk and impact of burnout. Holistic approaches that combine institutional support with individual empowerment are, according to research, the most effective. This means creating environments where employees are encouraged to take breaks, set boundaries, and access support, while also ensuring that workloads are realistic, leadership is supportive, and policies align with human needs. Communication is the thread that connects all these strategies. Transparent, respectful dialogue, whether among peers, between supervisors and staff, or across organizational levels, builds trust and allows concerns to surface before they become crises. Interventions that improve communication, clarify expectations, and encourage feedback have been shown to reduce burnout and boost morale. It is important to recognize that no single strategy will work for everyone, and that both prevention and recovery are ongoing processes. What matters most is the willingness to notice when things are out of balance, to act early, and to draw on a wide range of tools and supports. For those who feel stuck in exhaustion, hope lies in knowing that change is possible, not just for individuals, but for the systems in which they work and live. The journey to prevent and recover from burnout is not a solitary one. It is a collective effort, requiring honesty, courage, and the belief that workplaces can and should be places where people thrive, not just survive. Evidence shows that when organizations and individuals commit to multidimensional strategies, when leaders model healthy behaviors, and when support is woven into daily life, burnout loses its power. What emerges is not just the absence of exhaustion, but the restoration of energy, optimism, and a renewed sense of hope for the future.